بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now, as I promised in last week's lesson that from the next week we were going to look at the next section of our weekly fiqh classes, which is with regards to the janazah, salah, with regards to bathing the deceased, with regards to shrouding the deceased. Now, the topic of janazah is something which is very, very important in Islam, and it's the only topic in Islam which one is certain to go through. You know, the other topics which we looked at regarding namaz and taharat and purification, it's not certain on anyone. What I mean by that is, you know, the namaz, just say for example, if someone is mad, if someone is retarded, if someone's got some mental problems, or if someone is in a coma, namaz isn't obligatory upon him. If someone, say for example, is in a coma, he's got some mental illnesses, fasting isn't obligatory upon him. If someone is poor, zakat is an obligatory upon him. If someone is poor, hajj is an obligatory upon him. But do you know the bathing and shrouding, this is something which I can guarantee you everyone will have to go through. Okay, either sometimes one of your loved ones may pass away, so you need to then do it yourself, or it will be done upon you, and that is a guarantee. You know, the other things like fasting, namaz, said if someone is in a coma, he doesn't have to fast, it's not obligatory. But this is something which a person will have to go through. You may do it yourself, or the very least what will happen is that it will be done on you. So this is something which is very important, and we need to look at and learn how to bathe the deceased, how to shroud the deceased, what things should we do, what are the regulations when it comes to the janazah and when it comes to bathing and shrouding the deceased. Because what happens is that, do you know, at that time when somebody passes away, a lot of people are very, very emotional at that time. So what happens is that people, they start doing things which is actually not found in the Quran and Sunnah, and they say, well, you should do this to the deceased, or we should start doing this with the mayyit and the deceased. Now, because people are very, very emotionally highly charged at that time, you can't say to them, oh, you're doing a bid'ah, or brother or sister, you're doing a bid'ah, because if you start using the word bid'ah, they're going to start frowning at you, they start, getting emotional at you that, or somebody's passed away and are using these words bid'ah and so on. So it's very important that, the brothers who have assembled here, that we know exactly how to do the ghusl, what to do when somebody passes away, what does the sunnah say, and also like when we are facing this situation, that whatever we do everything according to the Quran and according to the Sunnah. Now, this week's lesson is going to be a bit more on the theory side, but inshallah next week when we look at the ghusl section, and probably the week after when we then look at the shrouding section, it'll be a bit more practical. But one sincere advice I'll give to everyone is, what we're going to discuss this week and even next week and the week after, it cannot replicate the real thing. Okay, do you know what I'm going to go over here? It's a more kind of relaxed atmosphere. We got the pens there, the books there, we've made all our notes and so on. It's a more relaxed atmosphere. We just relax, chill that way. We're learning about this topic, but it can never ever replicate the actual thing. Here we could just imagine it, or there's a deceased in front of us and we do the ghusl like this. But just put yourself in a situation, just imagine there is actually a deceased there. There is actually a corpse there. Now, you're not going to be looking at the notes and say, okay, like a cooking thingy, you're doing some cooking stuff like, okay, get one jug of water and put it there. You won't be able to remember all these things. You're not going to take a notes there when you are actually doing the actual ghusl. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, and this is, as I said, a sincere advice, that what we go over here, the best thing is put it into practice. Now, what I mean put it into practice, I don't mean like you kill someone and then you start, doing the ghusl and the shrouding. Don't get the wrong idea. What I mean is that There are some places, I'm not sure around this area, but obviously in Small Eve, there's Commentary Road, there's Gamkol Shari. What they do is that sometimes some people pass away in Commentary Road and in Gamkol Shari where there's actually no relatives, no kind of family members of the deceased around. So what happens is that it's like anyone just goes and just does the ghusl and the bathing. So what you could do, this is again for your own, practice, that, try to attend one of these. You don't even actually have to do the ghusl, but you could observe people, how they actually do it, how they actually bathe the deceased, how they actually shower the deceased. And then in that way, you will remember the rulings and the maslas. Look, a good comparison between janazah, I'll give you, is of Hajj. Because when Hajj goes on, before Hajj, we do all the courses, Hajj courses, we show the presentations, we do HD videos of Hajj. But it can't replicate the real thing. It's only when you go there, that's when you remember everything. So exactly what we're going to do here is that it's theory, and we're going to try to do a bit more practical next week, but it can't replicate the real thing. And the main advice is that you try to then put it into practice by trying to attend one of these bathing, real life bathing and shrouding of a deceased, so that you can learn the rulings and the maslas. Now the first section which we're going to look at with regards to the deceased is Sakaratul Maut. Okay, so in Arabic it's called Sakaratul Maut, which basically means the pangs of death. And these are the following things which we're going to look at. What is Sakaratul Maut? Why is it important? What are the signs? And what to do when the Sakarat approaches, what to do after the ruh, soul departs, and what to refrain from after death occurs. So these are, inshallah, we're going to look at. Inshallah, when we do the next slide, I'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. Now, what is Sakaratul Maut? Sakaratul Maut is basically the pangs of death, yeah? So when a person is about to pass away, the Arabic word is called Sakaratul Maut. Okay, so when a person is about to pass away, when he goes through, when his breathing becomes a bit heavy, he starts heaving rather than breathing normally. When he gets a bit agitated, we're going to look at some of the signs later. That is the time where you can say he's going through the Sakaratul Maut, the pangs of death. Now the next slide here tells us, why is Sakaratul Maut so important? Now I mentioned a Quranic verse and a hadith regarding that. The reason why Sakaratul Maut is very, very important is because when the Sakaratul Maut comes, repentance is not accepted. Yeah, Tawbah is not accepted. At this moment in time, even though we could be so far away from the deen, we may be like drinking alcohol, taking drugs, we may be like committing zina and adultery. But if we were to repent and do tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will accept our tawbah and repentance, yeah? However, when a person is on his deathbed and the sakaratul maut, i.e., the ruh is just about to come out of his throat, just about to leave his body, just about to depart, if somebody was to say, indeed I have repented, ma qala inni tubtu al-an walallazina yamutun wa hum kuffar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that person, Allah will not accept his tawbah and repentance. That person will die as a disbeliever. Ulaika a'tadna lahum azaban alima. And Allah says that for those who don't believe in Allah, there is a severe and humiliating punishment. Okay, so what I'm trying to say, this is so important, Sakaratul Maut. Before that period, any sins that you have done, Allah will forgive. Even if you lived your life in shirk and not believing in Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive that, accept your iman. But as soon as you reach that state and status, that particular stages of your life, the last stages of your life, no tawbah is accepted. And this is further elaborated from the hadith after, where it can be found Tirmizi, Ibn Majah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah yaqbalu tawbat al-abdi ma lam yugharghir," which means the repentance of his servant until the time he passes into the throes of his death and his soul struggles to get out of his rattling throat. Okay, so basically when the, just the last embers of your life, up to that point, Allah will accept your tawbah. When he then goes the other side of the hill, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept your tawbah and repentance. Any questions regarding what I have discussed thus far?
At that stage, would you be able to talk then?
No, you won't. It's going to be very difficult to talk.
So you can't ask that.
Before, like we look at it, obviously before that, obviously you could tell like he's before that there are some signs which will take him to the sakaratul maut. So it's like before that, he could still manage to say some words, and that's when he should say the kalima. We'll come back to that later.
Yeah, but some people die on their sleep.
Obviously those who die in their sleep, they don't actually have a sakaratul maut. What happens is that when you sleep, the soul goes, the ruh goes. Yeah, so the ruh gets again, and then obviously what happens is that if Allah wants life for us again the next morning, He puts it back and then we wake up. Allah doesn't will life, so what's going to happen is that's it. So he'll just die peacefully. There will be no sakaratul maut for that person.
When you have sakaratul maut, would you be able to see the other side?
Yeah, that's what happens. Like when sakaratul maut comes, as mentioned in the hadith, that you do start seeing angels. So if you're a good person, you'll see good angels or angels coming. Because angels, remember, come to take your soul away. So if you're a good person, you'll see angels in a nice form. But obviously if you're a bad person, then angels will come in a very, very horrendous and a terrifying form to take your soul away. Some people, they see their abode in the hereafter. So if they're a good person, he sees like some things of Jannah. Somebody was very bad, he could see like the fire of hell. So it all depends. Obviously it's difficult to say anything concrete, because obviously no one has actually seen that and then lived to then tell the tale, if that makes sense. But okay, now the next section is basically signs of sakaratul maut. Now when do we know that somebody is in sakaratul maut? When do we know that this person is now experiencing the last embers of his life? Now these are some of the things, his breathing becomes a bit heavier, he starts heaving, his legs, they go a bit weak, he sags down, he's unable to stay up, his nose top turns aside, or his nose becomes a bit bent, his temples collapse inwards. So these are some of the signs that death is nearing that particular individual. Yeah, if you can't finish that, what I'll do, I'll just forward it to you could then make some handouts for next week then. So I don't think you probably could copy everything out. Okay,
that'll be the best thing.
GG. Yeah, if you want to make some notes here and there, so, but I'll be able to copy every single thing up. Yeah. Okay, the next paragraph or the next slide here is what to do to help the muhtadar. So this is where we come in. So just for example, somebody is about to pass away. He's going through the pangs of death. So just for example, the loved ones who are around this person, what should he do? Now it's mentioned here that you should make the dying person lie on his back with his face towards the Qibla on his right hand side if possible. Okay, so what you should do is, there's two things. Whichever way the direction of Qibla is, so just if for argument's sake Qibla is in this way, so you should then try to make him lie down on his right hand side if possible, facing towards the Qibla. Now if that is not possible, then in that situation you just make him lie down on his back. What I'm trying to say is that it's preferable to make him face towards the Qibla, but if that is not possible, then just make him lie down on his back, because obviously a person, he may be dying say at home or in hospital, so you're not sure which way Qibla is. So in that situation, obviously somebody is dying in hospital, then whichever direction the bed is, you're just gonna keep him face there. If you can, try to make him face on the right hand side, but if it's too difficult for him, then you just make him lie down on his back. The muhtadar, he should say the following prayer. Now remember, this is like before or after, we'll look at that later, but this should be done, say, before he says the kalima. Okay, so this should be like these prayers which I mentioned there. Allahumma gfirli warhamni wa alhiqni bil rafiq al-a'la. So this is a dua which that muhtadar, remember, is the Arabic word which means the person who's about to pass away. He should make that particular dua. Okay, but remember, this is before he says the kalima, yeah? The next point here is, you should not say anything which diverts his or her attention to the concerns of this worldly life. Now what I mean by that is, when a person is about to pass away, you should not take the opportunity and then talk to him about business or about his children or about football or like last minute goal or something like that. It's not the time to talk about any worldly things. Sometimes people, they talk about businesses and houses and about land in Bangladesh and so on. So this is not the time to talk about that or about his will and inheritance. So he says here that not to talk about anything which concerns of the worldly life. Next point is quite important. If the person, remember this is for the guys who are around him, yeah? If that person who's about to pass away says kalimai kufr, yeah, he says some words which borders kufr, in terms of like he says, I don't believe in Allah. That person about to pass away, he says those kind of words. Or, there have been stories, about people at that time when they're passing, they singing and then they pass away. They're saying some names of pop stars and football players, then they pass away. There have been many, many stories. So if somebody was to say something like really, really bad, about Islam, about the creation, about God, about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he passes away. Now we as Muslims, okay, let's not judge on that individual, because we, generally speaking, we are not allowed to judge on anyone. Okay, this is something which is very, very, we tend to do it all the time, even though we tend to have principles and we say, oh no, we don't judge on. We should never ever judge everyone. So here and this individual as well, we should never say, oh, like he's a kafir, he's gone now, he's going to go to the fire field because he said kalimai kufr. What we as Muslims should do is, number one, is conceal what he actually said. Try your best to conceal it, or think good in terms of it was slip of the tongue. Yeah, slip of the tongue, because of the stress he was going through. Because sometimes when a person is angry or when he's stressed out, he says some words which he afterwards realizes that he shouldn't have said. So exactly as well, this person, because he was going through the sakaratul maut, okay, and remember, you and I can't really say what is sakaratul maut like, but what we can say, when we see people going through sakaratul maut, it's not something easy. It's not like a walk in the park or anything like that. So this person is going through something difficult. He then accidentally said a kalimah kufr. So we should then conceal what he said and think that, look, this is a slip of the tongue. And then right at the bottom I've written that, pray to Allah for his forgiveness, that whatever he said, whatever came out, okay, just ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawbah and repentance, but never ever go around and start telling people like, oh, he's a kafir, he's died as a murtad, and this and that, let's not bury him and so on, let's like throw him to the wolves, anything like that. We're not allowed to do that. Understood that? Okay, if he did say anything, just ask for tawbah, because as I said, people go through stress at that time, and sometimes slip of the tongue, some things may come out. We as Muslims should conceal that to the best of our ability. What the scholars have said is that you can say to people without mentioning his name. Yeah, you can say to people in terms of, if somebody says give a bayan or he's giving a lecture and he says that, oh, I know someone who passed away and he said kalima kufr when he passed away. Now you can say that in that way without mentioning, because remember, if you mention his name, then it becomes backbiting, it becomes ghiba, and because he's passed away, then there's no way you can ask for tawbah because he's passed away. But if you were to say in a way like to warn people that, look, brothers, make sure you're on the straight path, otherwise if you live a life of sin, then I know someone who lived a life of sin and then at the time of death he said kalima kufr. In that way, as an example, you can mention the story, but you can't mention, or his name Abdul Rahman, who passed away such a day, lives in such an area, because that will then become ghiba and backbiting. Any question regarding this fourth slide here? Jay.
Sorry, correct me if I am wrong. This is why you're here. Shaitan promised to Allah that he will try to take our iman until the last breath.
Jay.
So if someone make this kind of remarks, does it mean that he dies without being a Muslim?
Again, as I was explaining, that we shouldn't judge whether he dies as a Muslim or not. So again, we shouldn't judge. We should just leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, Allah knows best.
I heard it one of them similar to it. Like it's ulamas and scholars. They saw the mothers and fathers like this and say, we've been through and this is not the right direction. And he just said, no, denying, don't do these things. You want to know, you don't want to. And the sitting on the ulamas is well sitting. And they're watching. and they are repeating the like kalima, and he just said no. They are thinking wrong way. Then minute later, they come back again alive and say, "You're refusing this." He said, "This is front of me. This is the position he's running with. Therefore, I'm refusing them, not these things what you are mentioning." Do you understand what I'm saying? Like same time, deathbed. Somebody is one of them scholars, and everybody reading. They're like a kalima, reading and so. And by the time he's refusing, no, he just refusing everything, because he can see his mother come and like face on it and come and say this, and he's refusing everything, and they are thinking he refusing the kalima.
Oh, okay.
This is the one I'm
Okay. He's refusing his parents.
Exactly same thing.
See.
বুঝছেন কি হয়েছে? This is ওলা তো এটা তো আমরা হয়তো থিঙ্ক করি রাইলাও তো হইতো পারে নাই আমরা হয়তো থিঙ্ক করি আর এর রং কর আসলে হমুকা মাইরোর এক্স্যাক্টলি সেম পজিশন হয় এটা উলামার কোনো ঘটনা হয় আমি এটা তো নরমাল মানুষ এটা হার্ড এটা মোস্ট অফ দ্য বয়ান আমরা বলতাম
বালা যারা মানুষ আছে নাকি অনেক সময় সন্তানে যখন রাস্তা হয় মানে এরা তো ডাইরেক্ট সন্তানরে পড়াই না বাট not everybody can see that.
Yeah, that's
one of them scholar I believe after one of the scholar he said his last minutes like he said is the Allah is one. You produce this subut.
Bring evidence.
You already mentioned hundreds of them, and still Shaitan is arguing, and then another like his ustad he send something and just say without any record Allah is one. That's it. He just mentioned it. It's happened on the. It's like more the scholars even. We are on normal people.
Okay, we'll just move on with the next slide. Okay, so as I was explaining before that the previous slide which I mentioned is what you should do when that person is about to pass away in terms of making sure that you get him prepared, you get him comfortable and so on. Now, why should you get him prepared? Why should you make him, say, lie down on his right-hand side or make him lie down with his back, like lying down on his back, is so that he can say the next thing, which in Arabic we call talqeen. And talqeen basically means, if you look at the second hadith in particular, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that man kana akhiru kalamihi la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. That whoever says or whoever's last words are La ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah, he will enter Jannah and paradise. Okay, that's why it's mentioned in a hadith that innamal a'mal bil khawatim, or kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam, which means that actions are according to their endings. Okay, meaning that when you pass away, whatever you did last, whatever you said last, that will be the main thing. So if somebody, like for example, did say kalima kufr when he passed away, then his situation hereafter may be serious. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. But if somebody was to leave this world saying the kalima, then obviously he's got a good chance in the hereafter to enter Jannah and paradise, because as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that whoever says the kalima, then dakhala al-jannah, that person would enter Jannah and paradise. Now let me explain what should happen in that situation. So the person is about to pass away. So the people who are around him, they should recite the kalima. So you should say to him, La ilaha illallah, and so on. You should, and then that's what I mean talqeen. Talqeen means that you read, and then the person recites. So you recite the kalima, and then the mayyit and the deceased, he will then recite it. Now as soon as he recites it once, then that's it. You stop. Yeah. What a lot of people do is that they keep on reciting the kalima, and they keep on telling the mayyit, oh no, you have to keep on reading the kalima and so on. There's no mention of that. The main thing is that the last words he says before he leaves this world is the kalima. So if he said the kalima once, he says the kalima, and then say 10 minutes later he passes away, that's okay, because they were the last words. What I mean, what people do is that they think, they need to keep on reciting the kalima from that period until his ruh leaves the world. That's not necessary. You just make him say it once, and then that's okay. Everybody then be quiet, you could then to yourself could read Yasin, as we're going to look at later, or other kind of surahs or any other Quranic verses, and then just let him die peacefully and so on. So that's the main thing.
So what happens like if he says Allah ilaha illallah first time or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and then within 10 minutes he didn't say anything, but just before the last minute he says something else.
Yeah, if he then says something else, then you should then try to do the talqeen again. Okay, I mean, so just for example, 5 minutes later he then talks about worldly things or something else, then you need to then start the process again. Yes, so you need to then, main thing is that you have to make sure that the last thing he says is the kalima before he leaves this world.
So this is before he goes to sakrat, before he loses his.
Yeah, because obviously, before. Because obviously when it's sakrat, you won't be able to listen to you. Yeah. Okay, the next slide I've just mentioned there regarding reciting Surah Yasin. I've actually mentioned the hadith there because you get some people who say, oh, there's no basis or there's no hadiths regarding reciting Surah Yasin before the mayyit or the deceased passes away. So you can see the hadith here, which can be found in Musnad Ahmad, Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan Ibn Majah. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Iqra'u surata Yasin ala mawtahum," which means that recite Yasin near the dying amongst you. So when the person is about to pass away, Surah Yasin is very, very powerful. Yeah, and even when the person does pass away, and when you go to visit his graves, always read Surah Yasin. We're going to look at that one, inshallah, later when we look at visiting the Qabristan and some adabs and etiquettes. So when you visit the mayyit and the deceased, then again Surah Yasin is also very, very powerful. And also before he passes away, it's very, very powerful as well. It eases the sakaratul maut when that person is going through that difficult time. Okay, the next slide is what to do when the soul departs. So what we mentioned before is what to do before the soul is departing. So the people around, they should, make him say the kalima and so on. So we've read that. Now we're going to be looking at what to do when the soul departs. So when the soul is like leaving, or when it's leaving the body, then what should the people do around him? Now first and foremost, those present should recite Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So when the soul goes, and basically if he dies in the hospital, the doctors, whoever, nurses will probably confirm that he's passed away. So as soon as you see that he's passed away, he's left this world, then you should recite Inna lillahi wa inna raji'un. And remember, this is not for those who are around him. This is for any maut ki khabar, any khabar of death. So whether you live somewhere else and somebody has passed away there, and you've heard that Abdul Rahman or Bakr or Zayd has passed away, then it's a sunnah that when you hear that somebody has passed away, you should say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
Only the Muslims.
Yeah, for Muslims. Yeah, you can say for non-Muslims as well, because this this dua inna lillahi, it just talks about the soul departing. So even if a non-Muslim, someone, maybe a colleague of yours, if he passes away and you were to say this, that's okay, because you're not actually saying a dua here. It's not a dua. It's just like basically stating a fact, which is that the soul returns to Allah. Inna lillahi wa raji'un basically means the soul or the ruh returns to Allah. So whether it's a non-Muslim or a Muslim, the soul eventually does return to Allah. So to say that, there's no impermissibility or no detestability regarding it. The next point, okay, so obviously the person's passed away now. You read the dua, you read Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Then what should you then do? Now it then goes on to say that take a strip of cloth, pass it under the chin, bring it to the top of the head and tie a knot. So you get a cloth, okay, because when a person passes, now I'll explain the reason why you need to tie his chin. Like you get a cloth and then tie it, like women do with their headscarf and so on. So you tie it so that their chin remains closed. Now the reason why is that if somebody passes, like get it, like just like tie like that. Tie here. Now the reason why is because if a person passes away and his mouth is open, okay, now if you don't close your mouth straight away, it gets hard and you can't close it afterwards. So obviously when he's passed away, his body is still warm in terms of the blood is still kind of circulating around his body, so you could easily close it, but afterwards you won't be able to close it. When it gets numb and it gets cold, and in particular nowadays they put the body in the freezer. If it's in the freezer and his mouth is open, you won't be able to close it afterwards. So therefore it's very important that if he has, obviously he's passed away thing. Even if he's passed away with his mouth closed, it's still good to still, because sometimes it could open afterwards. When they're transporting the body, it may open afterwards. So it's always best that you just tie it. And similarly, it's also good to close the eyes as well. Yeah, because sometimes a person, he may die with his eyes open. So again, you need to close his eyes. You shouldn't obviously leaving the eyes open is a bit scary as well for people who probably see him afterwards. And as well, if you leave the eyes closed, you won't be able to close it afterwards. So that's a good time, because obviously the blood is circulating around his body. So you should close the eyes. And it's mentioned that you should read the following dua when you close his eyes, and you should pray for the person as well. Okay, the next thing, what should you do? What to do when the soul departs? So still continuing. Straighten the hands and the feet. Yeah, straighten the hands and the feet. Meaning that, again, when somebody passes away, just say if he's had a heart attack and he's passed away, so his arms and legs may be all over the place. Or he's had a stroke or something, his arms and legs may be all over the place. So again, you should just straighten his arms, make sure that it's on the side of his body, make sure that his legs are straight. Or sometimes it could be someone who just had a really bad death, in terms of he was screaming, shouting, and his arms were all over the place, was kicking out and so on. So again, when he passed away, just straighten his arms and his legs. Okay, that's also very important as well. Again, because of the reason I mentioned above, because if you didn't, and if you just leave his arms all over the place, then when his body gets numb and cold, then it's going to be difficult for you to straighten his arms. So you should do it at that particular time. Also, make sure the feet is also close together, so there shouldn't be a gap again between his feet. And also tie the feet with a strip of cloth. Okay, also make sure, like you done with the thingy, that you tie his feet with a strip of cloth. All these things are adabs and etiquette. Again, if you didn't do it, there's no harm or guna in not doing it.
Both feet.
Yeah, but yeah. Okay.
It's timing before go call this is.
G. Yeah. Okay. The next point is cover the body with a sheet of cloth and place it on a flat bed or cot. Okay. So then you just, again, most of the things would, if you imagine it happened in a hospital, so all these things like a strip of cloth, all these things would be there. Obviously, if the person passed away at home, then these things you should have at home, or should get ready. So even a sheet of cloth, it doesn't have to be a white sheet, any sheet, even a bed sit or something. You cover the if you cover the face and the body, and that's also desirable as well. Next point, inform relatives and friends, and also place some incense or perfume near the deceased, or people do agarbatti and so on. So to put agarbatti near the deceased, that's also allowed and permissible as well.
Agarbatti, the Hindu use them agarbatti, so.
It's okay. It's the smell, and that's what it is. So it's not about Hindus using it or anything like that.
Because they use a lot of agarbatti.
No. Hindus, they also use tasbih.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. G. The next point. Now, the next slide is what not to do when the soul departs. Now, this is very important, because a lot of people, they start doing things which are not Islamically speaking correct. So what not to do when the soul departs. Now, the first point is wail, lament, or mourn over the dead body. Now, what we mean by wailing is something which was very, very common in pre-Islamic Arabia. What would happen is that when somebody passed away, sometimes you see Shias doing it, they start slapping their own face, to go like that, and they start and some of them, they actually do it intentionally, in terms of they start crying. They're not actually crying, but they start this loud voice screaming hysterically, but in reality they're not actually crying. There's no tears coming out, but they're kind of hysterically kind of screaming and stuff. So that is known as wailing, lamenting. There's no basis of that in the Sharia. You shouldn't do that. It's called noha in Arabic. So this is something which Prophet ﷺ has prohibited. So wailing, or obviously, don't get me wrong, you can cry. This is where a lot of people get mixed up. They think that wailing, lamenting, mourning means that you can't cry. You can cry. Because obviously it's natural, isn't it? Somebody passes away, if a loved one passes away, naturally you're gonna cry. Tears will drop from your eyes. Many hadiths of Rasulullah ﷺ, when his son Ibrahim, he had a young son called Ibrahim, passed away. So Rasulullah ﷺ, he cried. another Sahabi in the name of Uthman bin Mazun radhiyallahu anhu, who's mentioned in the hadith of Tirmidhi that when he passed away, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cried, and it's mentioned that a tear from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam eyes dropped onto the face of Uthman bin Mazun radhiyallahu anhu. So there's nothing wrong with crying. When somebody passes away, there's nothing wrong with crying. But what the Sharia doesn't agree with is, wailing, lamenting, or making a big scene in that situation. Just losing, just like without, when you actually, you're not naturally doing it. It's just like you're doing it intentionally. Just start, crying, screaming, and getting unnecessary attention. This is something which the Sharia doesn't like. Okay, this is number 2. Now listen to number 2 properly. Remember, this is what not to do we're talking about, not what to do. This is what not to do. Recite the Holy Quran near the deceased before ghusl has been performed. And listen carefully, this is where a lot of people get mixed up. Somebody's passed away. So just imagine he's passed away. This is his, the bed where he's lying. So what happened, people, they go near him, they get their Qurans out, and they start reading. They do a Yasin Khatam or this Khatam, that Khatam near the deceased. You're not allowed to do that near deceased. Now don't get me wrong, as soon as he passes away, you can read for him, Isal Thawab and so on, but it should not be done near the deceased. It should be done away from the deceased. Okay, away in terms of like in another room, at home, in the masjid. That's allowed thinking. But obviously before you've done his ghusl, after he done his ghusl, after he done his ghusl and he put him in the coffin, then you can pray near him, but not before that. Now why? Why do you think you're not allowed to do that before? Why? Because yeah, very good. He's impure, yeah. Because when somebody, that's why we're going to look at later. That's why we need to do ghusl for him. Now, when somebody passes away, you become impure. Your najas hukmi. If you remember when we looked at when you have a wet dream and when you have intercourse, you become impure. Impure, not your body doesn't become impure, but internally you become impure. So similarly, when the ruh leaves your body, it's like you've become internally impure. Obviously, externally you're pure. So if somebody was to touch the mayyits or the deceased hands, his hand doesn't become impure, but internally you become impure. So therefore, you have to wait for him to, like for example, have a bath, ghusl. Somebody does the ghusl over him, and then obviously recitation of the Quran near him would be allowed and permissible. Also, another point, number 3, anyone in need of farz ghusl, so basically had a wet dream or had intercourse and he hasn't been for his ritual bath yet, or a woman in the state of haze or nifas should not come near the body. You see that? Yeah, so the deceased here, the mayyat, the body's here. So a woman who's on a period is not allowed to be near the body. A man who's had intercourse or he's had a wet dream, before he goes for his ghusl, he's not allowed to be there. Okay? Now, the reason why is because it's mentioned in the hadith that wherever there's a la tadkhulul malaikatu baytan fihi kalbun aw sura aw junub, mentioned in the hadith of Abu Dawood, that wherever there is a woman who's on a period or a man who's in need of a ghusl or a bath, angels do not enter that building. Angels do not enter that room. Okay? So that's why in that situation, that person who's in that particular state, angels are not going to be circulating that particular room. So therefore, it's advisable that women who are in their periods or men who are in need of a farz ghusl, they are nowhere near the deceased and the mayyit. Okay. The next point, delay unnecessarily the ghusl, janazah, salah or burial. Okay. Again, this is what not to do. Now, a lot of people do this. Somebody passed away, they delay the ghusl. Yeah. And I'll just mention one ruling here, which I haven't mentioned there, but you could write down if you want. There's no basis in the Sharia to delay the janazah until Friday. Yes, so a lot of people think that doing janazah on a Friday holds more reward or more thawab. There's no basis in that. And sometimes what happens is that there may be someone who passes away on a Monday. They will wait all the way until a Friday to do his janazah and to bury him. Yeah, and we're not talking about sending the body to Bangladesh, Pakistan. That's like another issue. Even though they may bury him, say in Handsworth Cemetery, he passed away on Monday, but they'll wait until a Friday because they think, Friday, a lot of people can come. A lot of people from from the area community can come. There's more Jamaat, there's more people. hundreds, thousands of people, so there's more reward. There's no basis in the Sharia. Okay, there's many actually hadiths of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraging the janazah to be done, ASAP as soon as possible, and there's no basis of having a lot of people there. There's no basis at all of that. Many occasions of 1 or 2 Sahaba, they would pray the janazah, they would bury the person. So what I'm trying to say is that there's no basis of that in the Sharia to have a lot of people for your janazah. So again, not to delay in the ghusl, not to delay in the namaz, and not to delay in the burial. Another masla, again this is very important as well, Ghair Mahrams should not be permitted to see the body. Yeah, a man has passed away, and sometimes you get some people, they're a bit flexible in the parda, so they say, oh no, he's just passed away, let the woman just see him, the final time he's going to see him, not going to see him ever again. Yeah, so what happened, they just let the woman see the man, they see the face of the man, and sometimes vice versa as well. A woman has passed away, so there's a strange man, and they say, oh well, he's not going to see the girl again, he's not going to see the woman again. So they uncover the face of the woman and they let the man see. Okay, that is totally wrong, haram. It's haram in normal day-to-day life, even more haram at that time, because obviously this person is about to pass away, so you don't want him to be committing a sin or guna, or inadvertently you should not force him or compel him to do something wrong or bad at that particular period. And also lastly, you should not engage in any things which are not endorsed by the Sharia or which is a custom of the non-Muslims. Okay, so any kind of non-Muslims kind of festival or these kind of things at that particular time, you should not do that at that particular time. Okay, what I mean by that is, 1 minute silence or something like that, or this, or 1 minute clapping or something, or at that time, or what's it, flag at half mast or something like that. Okay, so that concludes the first section here about the muhtadar. Now the next section is regarding performing ghusl. Okay, regarding performing the ghusl of the deceased. Okay, so we're going to look at. Sorry, any questions regarding what we just looked at? Sorry.
So, you said you'll talk about reciting Surah Yasin. You covered it.
Yeah, I mentioned the hadith, didn't I?
Fine. Yeah. So if I can just recap what I understood.
Okay.
At the state of Sakrat.
No, what I mentioned, I'm going to cover it later, is when we look at the Qabristan section, visiting the graveyard. So we look at reading Surah Yasin there. Yeah, sorry, what was the question?
So before they lose their consciousness, what do you read? Surah Yasin and Kalima?
Yes, Surah Yasin, anything from the Quran. What's mentioned in the hadith is you should recite Surah Yasin and Surah Ra'd. Ra'd in 30th para.
Before they go to Sakrat.
Yeah, at that time.
Which one?
Surah Ra'd. After Surah, before Surah Ibrahim. Alif Lam Mim Ra. Surah Yasin, Surah Yusuf or Bade. After Surah Yusuf.
At the state of Sakrat, what do you do? We don't read Kalima, only Surah Yasin. Because you say
Yeah.
No Kalima.
In the Sakrat time, you
time.
can read Kalima if you want. You by yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to read it, that's nothing wrong with you saying
with
Kalima.
the intention that they will listen and they will recite.
Yeah, they won't be able to listen because they're probably very difficult for them to listen. But if you want to read Kalima, that's allowed. La ilaha illallah, that's allowed. If you want to read Quran or any tasbih or dhikr, that's allowed.
Okay. Thank you.
One more.
Ji.
I heard it is go slightly easier, like from the ulamas. I'm talking about ulamas. They say when is death threat? If they're saying kalimat tankin, fine. If not, gently, if they read Yasin Surah, it will be better.
Mm.
And
That's okay.
That's they already mentioned it.
That's
This
okay.
is the one you want to know.
That's okay. You could read the Surah Yasin.
Surah
That's,
Yasin.
that's fine.
It will be help on the
Yeah.
from the
That's
others.
okay.
Yeah, this is they mentioned it.
Okay. Now I was saying the next section which we're going to look at is with regards to the status of performing ghusl. Okay. So as I said, we'll look at it a bit more in detail in terms of the practical side in next week's lesson. But just for this week, I'm just going to look at the rulings or the maslas, so you get an idea of this, inshallah, in next week's lesson. Now, what is the status of performing the ghusl of the deceased? Now, it's mentioned that it's farz kifaya for the Muslims to give ghusl to the mayyit and the deceased. Now, farz kifaya meaning that it's a communal obligation. Yeah, many of the things about janazah is like a communal obligation. So it's not farz ayn on every single individual, but it's a communal obligation that one member from the community should give the mayyit ghusl. Because if no one does, like I mentioned there, that the mayyit is buried without ghusl, then all those who know or knew about this will be sinful. Like you knew that this person, just say Abdul Rahman here, who's passed away, no one did his ghusl and you just like buried him, then what will happen is, those who knew about it, they would be sinful regarding that matter, okay? So you have to make sure that somebody does the person's ghusl. It then goes on to say that in such circumstances, it is permissible to remove the mayyit providing no sand has been thrown into the cupboard. So just for example, you've already put him into the cupboard, but you haven't actually, started throwing the sand or the mud or the soil inside, and then somebody realizes, oh, you know what, we've just buried him and we haven't done his ghusl. Then in that situation, you can take him out and then do the ghusl, janazah, and then bury him. However, if sand has already been thrown, then the body should not be removed. If he's already been buried, and then somebody clicks on or realizes that we haven't done his ghusl, then you would not be allowed to exhume the qabr to take him out and then do his ghusl and so on. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is the cut-off point is as soon as the sand starts being thrown into the qabr to cover the deceased. Before then, if somebody realizes and clicks on, yes, fair enough, you can take him out and then do his ghusl, but obviously afterwards you won't be able to do that. Yeah.
So if somebody, you know him, right, and he's passed away, but it's not somewhere here, somewhere else, and they buried him without the ghusl.
No, you won't. It's communal, meaning for that particular, the Muslims in that area, they would be sinful.
They don't know nothing about it, and it's already buried somewhere else.
Yeah, no, you won't be sinful for that. No, you won't be sinful in that situation. Okay, now the next ruling is quite important. Persons to give the ghusl, i.e. those who would give ghusl, like who will give ghusl of whom basically. Okay, that's what we're going to look at in this particular slide. Now, males should not give ghusl to females, nor should females give ghusl to any males. Okay, straightforward. So if a man passes away, so a woman, even though the woman may be the wife or the mahram or the sister, it doesn't matter. Women cannot give ghusl to men, and basically men cannot give ghusl to women. Okay, even though the woman happens to be your daughter, your mother, your sister, it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to do that. Okay, so that's the first rule. Now, who should be doing the ghusl? Okay, then he goes on to say, for an adult male, i.e. when an adult, a baligh, mature male passes away, the following people should be doing the ghusl. Number one, immediate relatives, such as father, brother, son, and so on. Okay, so if a man passes away, then who should do his ghusl? It should be that mayyit or that deceased immediate relatives, i.e. like his father, if he's alive, or son, brothers. If they're not there, then obviously any kind of like God-fearing person, as we mentioned there, like a Allah Ta'ala fearing and pious male, i.e. a God-fearing person, an alim or a scholar, then should do the ghusl of the mayyit. Okay, so basically, if a man passes away, then preferable obviously those who are close to him, they should give the ghusl. If they are not there, or like you just say somebody passed away, doesn't have any family members or friends or relatives around, then whoever within the community, obviously in each mosque you have like say the imam or someone where the funeral parlor, maybe you probably have a imam or someone knowledgeable in that field, he then does the ghusl. And the same also applies when a adult female, so if a mature woman passes away, in the same ruling, that immediate family such as mothers, sisters and so on, they would do the ghusl. And if they are not there, then any other pious, God-fearing female would perform the ghusl. Okay. Any questions regarding the points? Okay. Those who are, I haven't mentioned it there, but those who are basically nabaligh, i.e. those who are immature, then the rule is also the same as well in terms of if a boy passes away, it's preferable that men or male do the boy's ghusl. And similarly, if a little girl passes away, that women does the ghusl. However, if there aren't men around, it's slightly bit more flexible in terms of if women were to do the ghusl of the little boy, that's allowed. And similarly, if grown men were to do ghusl of the little girl, that would also be allowed as well. Okay, does that make sense? So basically, if it's an immature, because obviously there's no danger of like fitna or anything like that. So obviously, if they're young boys, young girls, obviously again the ruling preferable is that men do the ghusl of the boys, grown women do the ghusl of the girl. However, if they aren't around, then you could have actually like a crossover in terms of men can actually do the ghusl of little girls and women can do ghusl of little boys. That would be allowed. Okay, now this takes me on to the next 2 points. If there are no females to perform the ghusl of a female, just say for example, a woman has passed away and there aren't any women around. Okay, now obviously it probably will be, when you look at it, very rare, but it could be something like you're traveling somewhere and you're in the middle of nowhere and just say for example a woman passed away, so there's no women around to do the ghusl. So in that situation, the mahram males could make tayammum, meaning that that woman who's passed away, her mahram, so mahram, remember, doesn't include the husband, because husband, there's different rules for husband. Just for example, that woman's father, that woman's brother, that woman's son, that woman's nephew, and so on, uncle, they all considered to be mahram. They would now do tayammum, so they would not actually do a practical ghusl of that woman, of that sister who passed away, but they will just do tayammum of her. Okay, so now how do we do tayammum? We've read it before. Tayammum, what are the 2 things we do? Yeah, basically their face and their arms. Okay, so because it's like a mahram male here, so what will happen is that, just say for example the father, he will just tap his hand on some soil or mud, and with his bare hands, okay, he doesn't have to wear any gloves or anything like that, with his bare hands, he will just basically put it over his daughter's face, over her right arm, over her left arm, and that's it. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to do her feet or wash anything else. That's it. Her tayammum's done. Okay, she's basically clean now. Now, I haven't mentioned it there, but just say for example, if there aren't any mahram males around. So if you want to make this note, in that situation, ghair mahram can give or can make tayammum of that strange woman, but it will have to be with gloves or with cloth or something like that. Cloth, yeah? So basically what would happen, just say there's a woman, a sister has passed away, no females around. Just say for example you found a woman's body somewhere, no women around, no mahram around, whatever. So in that situation you're the only person, but you happen to be the ghair mahram. So you'll get a cloth, you tap it on some soil or mud, and then you just put it over her face and then like wipe it, and then over her right arm and then over her left arm, and then do her tayammum. Okay, understood that? And the same also vice versa as well, like if males and stuff. So again, same ruling. If a man passes away, there are no males there to perform the ghusl. So the female mahram of that man, so it could be the man's sister, daughter, mother, so on and so forth, they will do tayammum with their bare hands. And if there's obviously no female mahram around, then obviously a strange woman would be able to do the tayammum, but with some cloth. Any questions or before we look at the next point?
He or she will be able to see his face.
Okay. Hard questions.
Who the mahram? Yeah, they could see the face. Oh no, what do you mean? Ghair mahram?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
example.
Oh, ghair mahram. No, again, he won't. So another camera, you'll have to do it.
So basically they can't see.
You can't see it. Obviously, like for the face, obviously, you just have to like lift it and then go like this, and then obviously you cover the face, and then you just have to lift her arms and do the arms like that. So so on.
Say example, if the woman's or is the man, whatever is passed, and is women gonna do it the same thing with the gloves, and if she's not the peer, then what will be happening? Like
if she got periods,
yeah.
no, then she
can't
can't do it. Yeah, but if there are no one else there,
Yeah,
then she'll just have to do it then.
they have to do it.
Yeah, if there's no one else there. Yeah.
Okay, this is just clear one. It's hard part. I mentioned already.
Indeed.
This is
I thought we'll be missing Anik today, but we've got a good subject.
it's always
We had a student here called Anik. He's asked a lot of questions. You're taking his place today, inshallah.
yeah. Well, one of them you mentioned it, like exactly same thing, like already burials inside the cover. Then thief went to kafan surah, were inside of the cover, try to take the cloth out, just pull them cloth, and the the mayyit is touch the face, like slam it his face, and his face is crushed. And by the time the ulamas mention it, that the lady was there, and she was on before Farda. When you touch that, Allah Rabbul Alamin give power to his hand.
Okay, nice.
Islam it is one of the ulamas mentioned it. And everybody not know, when some of them, like here it required. It's one of the really strong ones.
Okay, shall we look at the next point, inshallah? The next point is regarding wife and husband. Okay, now in principle it's mentioned that, generally speaking, the wife or the husband, they should not give ghusl to their spouse. Okay, just generally speaking. So basically, if a husband has passed away and there's other men around, then obviously they should do the ghusl. The wife shouldn't do it, and similarly vice versa. If the wife passes away, other women around, let them do it. There's no need for the husband to do it. However, it then goes on to say that, second to last bullet point, that if there are no males to give ghusl, then the wife is permitted to perform the ghusl as she is in iddah mourning period. Okay. Now, just say for example, the husband has passed away, and you've got a scenario like above that there aren't any males around. Yeah, there's no men around. For example, just say husband and wife, they were on a journey. The husband passed away. There's no one else there. Now, in that situation, the wife would be allowed to give a ghusl, not tayammum, but actually do a practical ghusl. Okay, she could actually look at his face and so on. And the reason why is because the wife is in what we call an iddah period. We look at that inshallah later on. Iddah is basically when a husband passes away. The iddah for a wife is 4 months and 10 days. I'm sure everybody probably knows this. So it's 4 months and 10 days. It's mentioned in the Quran. We look at that a bit more detail later on. Iddah period. So it's 4 months and 10 days. So during the 4 months and 10 days, basically that wife, because she's in the iddah, she has to maintain that kind of bereavement, mourning. She won't be wearing any flashy clothing, any kind of fragrance and makeup and so on. And after the 4 months and 10 days pass, then obviously she's out of her iddah. And obviously if she wants to marry someone else afterwards, then she can. But because she's still in her iddah, we look at it there as well, that when a woman is in her iddah, technically speaking, she's still actually considered to be married.
Right.
Yeah, even though the husband's passed away, she's still technically speaking considered to be married. So therefore, she can actually perform the ghusl of the mayyit and the deceased. Okay, and then however, if there are no females to perform the ghusl of a female, then it's not permitted for the husband to make ghusl. Now this takes me on to the next point here, the other side of the coin. That is if a wife has passed away and there aren't any women there, but there's a husband there. So we mentioned that, look, if the husband passes away and there aren't any males there, then wives can do the ghusl for the husband. But how about the other way around? If the wife passes away, there aren't any women there, can the husband do the wife's ghusl? So the answer is no. Because what happens is that when husband and wife, when they're married, when the wife passes away, the nikah breaks, the marriage breaks. To the extent that if the husband there and there wants to get married to someone else, he's allowed. So in that situation, that husband will be treated like a ghair mahram to his wife. Even though, they've been married for so many years and so on, but as soon as she passes away, that wife is like a ghair mahram now to the husband. Now obviously scholars are quite lenient when it comes to obviously looking at her, so you can still look at her, but obviously you can't do the ghusl, okay? You can't perform the ghusl. So in that situation, that if there's no one else there, then as I mentioned above, that husband will just perform tayammum over his wife with some cloth or anything, and he won't be allowed to touch her or with her bare hands or anything, with his bare hands. Okay, now
the husband can see the
see the face, yeah.
face.
Yeah.
If they already say proper, ghusl for the women is his wife, and still he can see his wife.
Yeah, even just see the face, but can't touch her.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay, now just one or two things to mention before we finish. Now remember, I haven't mentioned it, but you could just make a note of it here. Is what are the conditions of doing ghusl? Now, one of the conditions is that, the body which you're going to be doing ghusl of, it has to be half or more than half. Okay. So what I mean by that, just for example, like if the body, just for example, the person got killed in an accident or something, got hit by a truck or a train, so, or just like was eaten by sharks or something like that. So just say is like some parts of his body is missing. Now, if half or more is located or can be found, then you'll do ghusl of the body. Yeah, then you'll wash the body. Understood that? If less than half is found, or if, say for example, an arm of the deceased is found only, or like for example, like just the head of the deceased is found, then in that situation, you don't have to do a ghusl. There's no ghusl. So what you do, just wrap in a piece of cloth and then you just bury. Just say you find his legs only. Yeah, then what you do, just wrap in a piece. You don't wash the leg or anything like that. You just wrap in a piece of cloth and then you'll just bury him. Okay. Also, another ruling here is that if somebody passes away by drowning, so if somebody drowns, then again there's also a ghusl for him as well. So even though his body is already moist and wet from before, you still have to do his ghusl. And another ruling to mention here is that sometimes what happens is that after you've done ghusl of the deceased, some blood may still come out from his wound. Yeah. So just for example, again, just say he was stabbed or something like that, or he got hit by a car, and then so this blood was coming out. So obviously the doctors, whatever the nurse, they patch it up somehow, put some bandages on. But what could happen is that after you've taken the bandage off, because remember we'll look at it next week that when you do his ghusl, you need to take off the plaster, everything off. So you do his ghusl. Yeah, but then after you've done his ghusl, some blood still comes out. There's no need for you to repeat the ghusl again. What you can do, you could just wash that area, and we'll look at it later, but just for example, if you've done his coffin already, if you shrouded him, and then you see that there's blood has kind of seeped onto the coffin, so what you do, then wash the coffin. Okay? But obviously, if you've already closed the casket and then you see blood coming out, then you don't have to repeat any, you don't have to wash that, just like bury him in that particular way.
Suppose on that time, like, he washed it, but still the blood is pouring, then what do you do?
Twice.
If it's still pouring, then then just put a plaster on.
Plaster on.
Yeah, just cover it. Yeah. If it's still continue pouring, it's like really big wound.
You can put the plaster
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Well, obviously, when it comes from the hospital, just say if there's plaster on, then you should actually remove it and then try to wash it. But if afterwards, yeah,
if the blood is
if it's still coming out, then just put something like a
what
plaster.
happens if there is no water anyway?
Then tayammum.
Then
Yeah. Then it'll be tayammum.
now because of that.
It'll be tayammum. Yeah.